SA Leader Herman Mashaba says the outcomes of his party's three-day policy conference will help to undo the harmful legacy of the ANC. He says the resolutions present a comprehensive plan to help fix South Africa. Mashaba joins us tonight to talk more about the policy outcomes. A very good evening to you, Mr. Mashaba. Thank you so much for your time tonight. One of the issues that has sparks a lot of interest as far as your policy conference is concerned, and we spoke to your spokesperson about this, I think about a week or so ago, was around doing away with triple BEE, broad-based black economic empowerment. And the debate on that issue has always been around whether the issue is the policy or the implementation in a way that furthers selfish interests. And you seem to have taken the view that the policy is what needs to go. Why?
Well, yes, good evening, and thank you very much, Tembegile and Newzroom Afrika, for giving us this opportunity. I think we will be real foolhardy as South Africans to continue with laws that have actually failed us for the last 30 years. Obviously, I think Triple B Act was enacted in 2003, and if you look at the results, that have really been disastrous, only benefiting the select few, the ones who are politically connected. And what we believe as ActionSA, we're not really prepared to follow policies that have actually failed. Triple B Act is a ANC policy. For us as ActionSA, we have our own policy that wants to really make sure that we address the suffering of black people who have been the victims of colonialism, apartheid, and the 29 years of ANC government. So that is why we want to come out with we're proposing our own policy called Inclusive Economic Empowerment and to really address this particular matter.
We'll talk about that in a moment, but you mentioned that Triple BE is an ANC policy. I wonder if you, in your reading of the policy, believe that it could work better if implemented by another party instead of it just being rejected because it was introduced by the ANC. Is that the essence of your rejection?
I think, you know what Einstein has always said, that if you keep on really doing exactly the same thing and expect a different outcome, then something is wrong with you. So I think for us as ActionSA, we believe we need to really bring a new policy that can really address the ills of the past, including the 29 years of ANC cadres in creating these oligarchs. So what we coming out with a policy that is going to really address the inequalities, address the creation of black entrepreneurs, because I remember personally in 1994 when I voted for the ANC, I expected to see an explosion of black entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, we're just seeing well-connected oligarchs. But at the end of the day, the black people are the biggest casualties of ANC policy. So for anyone to expect us to follow ANC policies, unfortunately, then we'll go and vote for ANC. We are coming out with policies that are going to address the suffering of black people, do it in a manner that is practical, that speaks to their lived experiences.
And part of that, as you've suggested now from your policy gathering, is the creation of an opportunity fund, basically, and what it will do is help the private sector, for example, to invest in ventures that would help grassroots opportunity development among black, Indian, and coloured as well as Asian communities. What would that entail, and how would you ensure that it is not for the narrow benefit, let's say, of the people at the top of that food chain, instead of actually filtering down to the poorest man, poorest black, Indian, coloured or Asian man on the South African street today?
Well, if one looks at our policy, we are proposing businesses are still going to really pay towards this fund and not do it out of love. It's going to be legislation where part of their profits must actually go into this fund to really be administered by professional people to ensure that black entrepreneurs are funded, to make sure that schools in these communities are well resourced, to ensure that 30 years down the line, every township, every village, every informal settlement, an engineer comes out of those communities, not to create oligarchs who become billionaires at the expense of the poor people. So what we're going to put the responsibility on auditing firms to ensure that they contribute a percentage of their profits that must go into this fund, and other people can also really contribute as and when they want. But at the end of the day, it's going to be legislation that is going to compel businesses to contribute to this fund through the profits that they make. So obviously, I think coming out with this legislation, it's not something that you can come out with it overnight, but already gives you a sense. And one thing that we found it really very encouraging and inspirational is that there's a buy-in from the business community. There's a buy-in from the black people in the communities that have really been failed by the ANC government. In fact, my first interaction and engagement on this particular policy was first to engage the casualties, who are black entrepreneurs. I grew up with thriving businesses in the black communities when the apartheid government was said that black people cannot run businesses. And now what has happened to them? They've been dominated by people from everywhere else. And not knowing how these people coming into this country. So what we are saying is we need to fund them, but the funding is not just really be the only solution.
Okay.
You need other interventions like education. We need to make sure that we resource schools in these communities. We make sure that we provide reliable, well-funded public transport system. We make sure that we build schools, hospitals, and boarding schools for these communities. But they are going to be funded by businesses that are today subjected to the ANC triple B policy. That B policy, South Africans give us the opportunity to really be the government, give us the mandate. We will bury triple B and bring in this inclusive economic empowerment policy that is going to benefit ordinary people, not benefit Herman Mashaba and his family.
Action SA Leader Herman Mashaba, it would have been great to speak to you for longer, sir, but thank you for your time tonight.